and Ryan, you guys come on down here. Wow, so thanks for coming all this way. And your movie's awesome.
Thank you.
And we've learned a lot from Amanda and talking with her. But one thing we also learned is that you guys have 3 daughters,
Yeah.
which I didn't know the first time I saw this film. And the oldest is like 23 or
22.
22. I mean, you guys, you must have gotten together so young, but you've been together that long. You have 3 daughters, and then you come up with a film like that. So you just got to tell us a little bit how you came up with that. Was that your fear as a father happening to your daughters?
No, it's the whole thing started because we were in production on a feature film, and Ryan had to run and grab something, and on his way back to set, he was in a car accident, and his car was totaled. And so he called me up, and he said, I got good news and bad news. The good news is that I have a car we can blow up now. The bad news is I was in a car accident, and be a little bit late back to set. So he got back to set, and we talked a little bit about whether or not he was actually serious about blowing up his car, which he was. And then that night, when we went home from set, Mandy and I talked and literally came up with the entire story in about 20 minutes or so. And the next day I had the whole outline written out, had him read it, and it took like, I don't know, 6 hours to write the script or something, because the story worked out fine. And so then it was a matter of, finding out how to blow up a car and, casting and everything else. And we had a very limited time because he wanted to do it for a very specific short film festival that was happening in just a few weeks from that point. So we had, like, I don't even know, maybe a week of pre-production.
6 days.
Yeah, and then we shot for what, five nights?
No, it turned out to be 7.
7
It was
nights?
supposed to be 5, but it turned out to be 7.
Yeah. So, and in Minnesota in September,
And October.
like the first night, it was like 96 degrees, and it was humid, and everybody was complaining because it was too hot. The second night, it was like 45 degrees, 50 degrees, and everybody's complaining it was so cold. By the last day of shooting, it was so cold, it was in the 30s, and the equipment was freezing up. We couldn't even get some of the shots that we wanted, so we had to change some stuff up. But yeah, no, I raised the girls to be very aggressive, so they'll defend themselves quite properly.
Yes, they do.
That's great. See, and I mean, it must have influenced you a little bit. Maybe it was that you wanted to show other girls, but I noticed a lot of, and I know that you guys are true horror fans, Halloween fans, we've talked, and I noticed a lot of, I kind of felt some, like, Leslie Vernon type with that one mask. How'd you come up with that mask?
I wanted some sort of like a skeleton mask, and so I looked for a mask that I thought would work, and found one. It's actually a paintball mask, and I contacted the company who makes them, and I was just like, hey, would you care if we used your mask in a horror film? And they said, no, that's super cool, go ahead. And so, yeah, that's how we got it.
Nice, that's awesome. And it's almost like Texas Chainsaw, maybe a little bit influence. What has been your biggest influence as a writer and a director?
I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so I kind of grew up in the heyday of just awesome films. I was born in the 70s, and so the very first film I ever saw was Star Wars. I was literally an infant. My dad took me to it against my mom's wishes, but, and, I just grew up seeing, Lucas, Spielberg, Scorsese, and then Tarantino was a huge influence. Some of Rob Zombie's stuff I really like, not all of it, but some of it. And it's funny that you mentioned Texas Chainsaw, because I pretty much watched that like 5 nights in a row before we shot this because I wanted to have a very similar kind of feel to it. But yeah, definitely horror influenced huge in everything I do because I love horror films, and of course, John Carpenter.
Nice. Do you want to pass the mic to your wife? And we've already talked to you during the female filmmakers panel, but how did you influence this movie? Did you, because you're a producer on this, so did you change some things? And again, they're your daughters too, so do you have any of that in your mind when, you know, you're trying to come up with this terrifying story?
Well, like he said, after we were done on set that one day, we went home and we collaborated on the story and pretty much had all laid out. I didn't change anything or anything later on because it was a pretty solid little story, a little short. And as far as my girls go, it doesn't really influence me that way either. Like he said, our girls are pretty strong girls that don't really put up with much that they don't want to put up with. So, you know, and they carry various things with them when they go out and stuff like that. So, no, and it's fun. And they've grown up with us doing horror films and stuff, so they're used to seeing various, you know, body parts and intestines and buckets of blood and stuff like that in our house. And so they're pretty used to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, those kind of, when Ozzy did his little extra, and people were like, does it bother you that your kid is being tied up and thrown in the trunk? Really? No, it doesn't,
Yeah.
you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, when you raise your kid a certain way, it does make a difference.
Yep.
So, I know he's just dying to tell us about the car, right?
Yeah, since I don't have any daughters, I can't really answer that previous question.
I didn't know, actually,
But-
but I was guessing you probably didn't.
I don't have any sons either.
No.
We did in casting, we did change one of the roles from a male to a female, which added a little bit of a different aspect to it. That's really the only change that was caused by the lack of pre-production time.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the car, it was, in case you don't know this, in Minnesota you can take a right turn on a red light. So I had the green light, I was going forward, the guy was turning and he hit my car into the median, which snapped my axle, which meant it was going to cost more to fix it than to not. And so I basically kept the car for like $200, got it towed up to Lee's, which is where we figured out we could blow it up, and we gutted it and blew the thing up.
So is there a little bit of pressure that, we have one chance, one take with this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
So cinematography-wise, I knew what I needed to get, and we had a 2-camera setup rolling. But in terms of, like, for me, the number one concern was safety. You know, one of my best friends, a guy who's like a brother to me, he actually had to light the fuse and book it the 60 yards to get to where, you know, camera A was with me. And then the other gentleman who was firing, not the gunshot that you see in the film, that was actually Ryan here, but the gunshot that actually set off, there was 3 different types of explosives in there, and one of them that lifts the car up, it has to be shot with a gun to activate. And so he had like a 1-inch diameter hole in a iron box that he had to hit from about 30, 40 yards away at 4 in the morning when he was exhausted. And it was 30 degrees. His scope fogged up, and it was just, there was so much tension during that. And you know, the rest of the cast and crew, Mandy was on B camera, which was about 20 yards behind me. Everybody else was 100 yards away from the car. And it still, I mean, we took as much safety precautions as we could. We knocked out all the glass and everything. And yet we still got pelted by debris, and the iron plate that from the explosive that was supposed to lift up the car actually shot up through the car, blew the roof off, and then flew up so high in the air that it took 2 minutes and 26 seconds to come back down and hit the ground. And it hit a shed about 20, 30 yards away from where the car was. And if it had come the other way, it literally could have killed someone. So we got really lucky with that.
How about the people who own the shed?
Oh.
It was the guy whose property we were on, and
Okay.
he just laughed. He thought
Oh,
it was
that's
pretty
cool.
awesome.
Nice. And
Yeah.
he's like, now I can blow up my shed.
Right.
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 Blow it the rest of the way up. So you got it on the first try, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah.
1 inch
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
gunshot.
he only took one shot.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But there was some F-bombs dropped as his
Mhm.
scope was fogged up, and he's like, I'm just going to go for it, because the fuse was already lit for the other explosives, so it was going to either happen or not.
Yikes.
So the most pressure was on him.
Well, I thought it turned out great. Did you have to do any work afterwards, like to make it, or it just happened perfectly like that?
I had to remove, the only digital effect in the whole film is I had to remove, well, there's two. I had to remove the mic pack lights on the back of the actors because they would glow through their clothes. No matter how much gaff tape we put on them, it didn't seem to matter. And then the smoke from lighting the fuse I removed so that you didn't see that. But otherwise, the explosion happened pretty much how you see it there. It was a lot longer. There was a lot more to it. But, you know, for purposes of the film, it's just 2 or 3 seconds, and that's it.
So it kind of ended almost like there might be something after. Are you guys thinking about a sequel or anything?
We are actually. We're planning a feature version of it, and this is going to be like the opening segment of the film, and then the opening credits will take place, and then the rest of the feature version will be the kids' parents coming and looking for them and finding this demented family that is very, you know, twisted, and all hell breaks loose. So.
Yeah, well, it's a great storyline and definitely keeps you on the edge of your seats. I'm going to open up to you guys in just 1 minute, but as far as casting, have you ever considered your own daughters for those roles?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have used the girls in a lot of stuff we've done, actually, and they love acting. But it's always the priority of school first. So we were like, well, we're shooting in September, overnights. As much as we'd like to have you in it, it's not feasible. So, but they've been in a lot of our stuff. We use them countless times for, you know, test makeup and stuff like that, and just, you know, camera tests and all sorts of fun stuff. And they love the gore and all that, and they have a blast doing it. So, like, you know, like Mandy said, you know, they'll bring like their boyfriends over, and there'll be severed limbs on our dining room table.
That
and
keeps
they're
them in
like-
line, though, right?
Right. Yeah. Our oldest is like, you know, her boyfriend said, you know, what do your parents do for a living? Because this is kind of messed up. And yeah, it's keeps them in check.
For sure. So you're talking about these severed body limbs. Do you guys make this yourself, or do you outsource that?
It depends on what we're looking for. Brent's really good at doing research and figuring out exactly what he's looking for when it comes to a severed limb, whether it's a right or left, how it looks, how big it is. And then we have a buddy of ours that has been working with us for quite a while, that he made us some really cool intestines. On a different shoot, we actually used pig intestines and all of the innards of a pig. We got it from a local butcher where we live. But by the time we were able to get to it, because we had to reschedule so many times due to rain, it had been sitting in our hot garage for like 3 weeks, so it did not smell good. So after that experience, he's like, I'm gonna make some guts for you guys. So he's been working on various things that we've needed over the past couple of years for props and stuff like that. So it just depends on what we're looking for.
Awesome.
But we do make our own blood, so.
Very cool.
And on that one with the actual real pig intestines that were 2.5 months old, I think at that point, I was the one who had to eat them.
Wow.
And store them and get rid of them after that.
After, yes.
Yeah, it was.
It
It didn't smell good.
That's very interesting. And then, what is your relationship? Can you tell everyone to this lovely couple?
I'm not related to them at all.
So you're just, I'm just, because people are probably wondering, the husband-wife team, like, wondering if you're the uncle or...
No, biologically, I'm not related to them at all. About 6 years ago, I made my first short film, and, like, we were friends on Facebook through the film community, and I needed an editor, and I knew this guy was awesome, and so he edited it for me, and we've been in contact ever since. And about 3 years ago now, I came to him with this idea for a feature film, and I had 2 feature-length scripts I wanted to do, and so we worked on those, and one of them is very, 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 very close to being done. I basically have to finish the credits on it. And our score person for that, who's in Alaska, is finishing that. The score for this one was a mutual friend of ours who's in Florida. I was going to say Florida or Georgia. So we use people on basically all over. And in between that, we've done 5 or 6 short films together, along with, like, I do other ones without him, but anytime he's like the A-team. I like working with as many different people as possible, but Brent and Amanda are the A-team, along with the other members of the team that have slowly trickled in that we continue to work with. Mm-hmm. Like, he talked about Matt, our different scores. I mean, we do use different people for different films, but a lot of times we bring in similar PAs, similar first ADs, so a lot of the same crew. And we have some great actors that aren't even in this one because they don't necessarily fit the story, but we love working with them, so we just try to create this huge list of people to work with that are good people.
That's awesome, and I guess Facebook is good for some things like that. So how far apart do you really live? Like, are you guys, because sometimes you're friends with somebody on Facebook and then they live across the country, or you find out they're down the street.
Just like 45 minutes away.
Not bad, not bad. Yeah. So I heard and learned that part of the reason why you guys spent the whole time here since Wednesday night was because you're just kind of looking around. It's your first time on the Outer Banks.
Yep.
So what'd you think?
Oh, we like it. Yeah.
I wish it wasn't rainy so we could have gotten better pictures and gotten the sunrise and the sunset, but otherwise it was great.
Yes, but you did get to see a nice sunrise, so
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
you got. And he says to us, "Well, I'm gonna have to go to swimming in the ocean tomorrow before we leave." So polar plunge, Sea Ranch, right? I'm gonna open it up to you guys. Do you guys have any questions? And you guys were location scouting too, huh? Yeah, that's. They found a great place called the Jolly Roger.
We've got all the bars. They are all full of alcohol.
Yes. Or are they now? All right, questions from you guys? I mean, he's asked you questions for sure. Yes, Mr. In the jacket.
So shooting outside is difficult for sound. How did you guys manage to not have like crickets ruin the whole sound?
Both.
We have an awesome sound team that we work with, and they've done really, really huge projects. They've done sound work for like The Walking Dead and History Channel, Travel Channel, stuff like that. And they just happened to live in the Twin Cities by us, and we got lucky enough that they agreed to work on a short with us for free, and then we became friends with them, and now they don't charge us nearly what they should. So that's how we get the good sound. Exactly.
Well, we were just wondering, are there crickets in Minnesota? You know,
yeah.
because
Oh, yeah.
every atmosphere of, the ones in the North Carolina woods, and, you don't really need to add the sound because they're there.
Yeah,
So,
there's crickets everywhere.
okay, there's crickets in Minnesota. So if you're looking, we don't really have that on the beach, but
Right.
so if we need crickets, we know where to go.
Yes.
Other questions?
Yeah, how was the casting for you guys? I mean, you had 5
Casting was brutal, to be honest with you. And it's always funny. The guy actor in the beginning, the kid, he talks very perfect when he enunciates, and like that's and that's just how he talks. So he was in character, And after about 4 or 5 takes, I realized, no, that's just how he talks. Like, I can't get him to change that. So it kind of is a running joke that, you know, if we need somebody to enunciate really well, we're going to use him. But Ryan did most of the casting. In fact, he casts probably 80% of our stuff just because he knows everybody. And so I'll just tell him, you know, I need a blonde that's about this tall, I need a brunette this tall, and I need, you know, 2 guys, you know, this tall, whatever, this build. And he, within like 20 minutes, he'll send me 300 pictures of people. And I'm like, I don't know, are any of these people good? You know? And so he's really the man on that as far as casting goes.
So the other story with casting on this one, we had the idea for it once my car was totaled, but we were busy with the other production, and Brent sent me a message like at 11:30 at night, said, if we're gonna do this for this festival, we gotta do it now, and we need to start filming in like 7 days, so I need it cast like tomorrow. And so I had like 24 to 30 hours to go through all my lists and try to figure out who was gonna do what, and like, is this person willing to get almost naked? Is this person willing to get blown up? Is there a way I can get these two comboed together? And then I go through my list, and then I post it, and then talking with him, we whittle it down, and that's how it sort of got changed, and because there was sort of a limited amount of guys who fit in that range, and those that did weren't a good fit. Some of them weren't a good fit with the females that we wanted to use. And we've done it before where we just changed a role from male to female because it adds a better dynamic to the film and it makes the film better. So that's what we did with this one also. But I do get on Brent's case that he did not give me much time.
I'm pretty particular about casting appropriate ages to play appropriate ages. So, like, I wanted teenagers for this. I'm very particular about that as far as the look of my actors. I want them to look their age. And it's a personal pet peeve of mine as a director when an actor comes in with their resume and it doesn't have their actual age on there, because I want to know. But that's just me.
Did you find out you find it challenging to find talented people of that age?
Yes. And a lot of people too, they give way less performance in an audition than they do when they're actually on set. So I've learned that over the years too. Exactly. And a lot of times they'll go to, 20, 30 auditions a weekend, and yeah, so they're just cranking them out.
I think we had a question over. Henry.
First, I would like to say I really enjoyed you guys' movie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second, when you guys, I know you guys said you worked together a lot on projects, and you said you got some features in the back as well. And you said you want to do a continuation of this one. How do you guys approach like the funding aspect of your movies? Like, is this something that you guys are backing fully, or you have partners to help?
Both. So we have a executive producer that we've worked with on many occasions here in Ryan, and there's a lot of projects that he funds, and then there's also other investors that we work with. We have a couple bigger investors that we've worked with a time or two on other projects, and in fact, I wrote a script 7 years ago now, for a psychological thriller, and we just landed a $1.3 million budget on that one. So sometimes it's just about waiting. I mean, we had the opportunity to do it for as low as $60,000 at one point, but I just knew what I needed for a budget to make the film how I wanted to make it, and so we just waited, and eventually our network grew with investors that we knew and met, and then the right one came along, and so now we're going to be doing that over the winter.
in terms of trying to get bigger investors, we can show them films like this. And we also invited him to set on the film that we did for this contest this year. And that's how we landed that investor. So we showed him the work, we invited him to set, we showed him how we work together, and he liked the project. And then we also invited him to the screening, the fest of the other film, which was this past Thursday. And we heard it went very well.
Thanks for being here. Yes, sir.
I was interested in how much it cost and how much explosives were used to get the car to move like that.
Well, like I said, the car was basically $200. Towing it was about $100, so that's $300 for the thing to go boom. And now for the things that actually went boom.
So we had 10 gallons of gasoline. We had 10 pounds of tannerite, which is a target explosive that you shoot at on ranges and stuff. And then we had 10 pounds of naphthalene bombs, which are a very specific percentage combination of crushed mothballs and black powder. And combine all that, and you get a big boom. In terms of overall budget for the film, it was about $8,000, I believe, for the whole thing.
How do y'all plan on distributing the film that you just got the big budget for?
We're going to be doing self-distribution, actually, initially. We've got a third of the budget will be set aside for marketing and distribution. And then through that self-distribution, because I already have deals worked out with AMC Theaters, which is a big nationwide chain, Marcus Theaters, which is another big one. And so after that initial run, we're hoping at some point during that course, a distributor comes along and says, hey, we want to put it in even more theaters, and we're going to cut you a big check to do it. And so that's the hope. But initially, because especially with digital distribution now, it's just so much cheaper. I mean, it's a massive logistical headache, but that's why I have her.
Yeah,
She
that's why
handles
we
that
have
wonderfully. So all I got to do is make the files, and then she can deal with all the people stuff that I hate doing. Yes.
Do you do film full-time, or do you have other jobs on your plate?
Ryan does like 400 jobs. Pretty much any, I mean, if you need him to be a party clown, he'll do it. He will do anything.
Got to get money somehow.
Yep. He's got to fund the film somehow. But Amanda and I, this is all we do. I've been doing this full time since 2005, and she joined me full time in 2015. So and we do everything from, narratives, documentaries, corporate client work, commercials, web video content, training videos. I mean, you name it, we do it. I don't do wedding videos, though.
Unless you want the car, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So you said that you were super influenced by the 80s and kind of the heyday Carpenter and the awesomeness that we got from that. How do you balance in the writing and the directing of the new world that we live in, of this kind of self-referential view on horror where you're like, oh, don't go in this stupid attic because you're dumb, and making it real and believable as you move through a spooky, Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque type movie. Like, how do you balance that out with, young actresses and actors and what you're trying to get out of them without it being hokey and without them seeming naive? How do you work that?
So this one is very specific about really trying to keep to the classic horror tropes. And the role that was switched, that was originally written for a guy and got switched, was the role of the fool. And that role ultimately ended up getting changed a little bit more. And that character was Samantha Sam, who is the girl in the flannel, kind of the main girl of the film. But, I don't worry about it, to be honest with you. I think that we live in a really weird time for films because so much has already been done, and I mean, to the point where Hollywood is just cranking out remake after remake after remake. And yet there are original stories out there, and we've seen a lot of them this weekend. There's some amazing films that have played here, and some fantastic original stories, and even some classic stories with new twists that are super fun. As far as the actors go, you know, I used to act, and one of the directors I worked with said, it's not your job to try and figure out whether or not the material's correct. It's your job to play the role. And that's really true. It's you know, you can pick apart any film to death if you really want to. And you can say, oh, well, they would never do that, you know. Well, of course they wouldn't, because that's not entertaining. If they just, like, stayed by the car the whole time, there's no movie then, you know. So you've got to kind of go with that idea that it's all for entertainment. And if you stick to the tried and true classic tropes, no matter what the genre is, you're gonna have more success, because your audience, it's a gut thing. It's all about the classic stories that go back to when we were cave people, you know, and things that hit us deep within, whether it's, you know, fear, anger, sadness, love, you know, all of that stuff. That's base emotions, and it's super easy to tap into. And it doesn't matter if somebody's got a cell phone or not. If somebody's in a remote area, I mean, you know, we're in here, we don't have cell service. You know what I mean? And we're in a town. You know, we walk outside, we got cell service. But, you know, it's still a day and age where there's a lot of places on this country people don't have cell service. And people kind of get spoiled when they live in the cities and they think, oh, well, that would never happen. Actually, it would happen. It can happen a lot easier than people think. I've driven literally across the country both ways, and there's way more uninhabited land in this country than there's inhabited. And so as far as, you know, getting them, like, how would they go into the barn and all that kind of stuff, that's what I wrote. That's what they're going to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I think that happens all the time because, you know, and just if you don't have family, or, you know, if you're not well known and you drop off, nobody notices. And
Yep. Don't get off the highway.
yeah,
Well,
I know,
and
right?
True story, real quick. I have a great uncle who lived way up north. And even though he went to coffee with the same guys every morning for the last 20 years of his life and then stopped showing up for a month, nobody thought to check on him. And, you know, it turned out he had died. And it was found a month later. And you know, it happens. So it's kind of one of those things that, yeah, people can absolutely drop off, even if they have, you know, family and friends that love them and stuff, because people get busy with their lives. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, what happened to Uncle Joe? I haven't heard from him in a month. Well, Uncle Joe's dead.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
I'll say that I felt all the action in the movie about a natural response to the situation. You know, I'll tell the boy quick, go sit with the girlfriend. Hey, you gotta go. You know.
Right.
And you know, the noise of the house, lights on in the barn. I mean, that makes sense to me. It's not like, you know, run away from murder. We're gonna go to the old chainsaw. That's not.
Right, right.
I thought it was very. I thought the whole movie was very natural.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't want it to get lost in translation like that. I thought it did too, as well.
Right on.
I was
Hey, this guy's wrong. Don't listen to him.
I don't make movies. But, you know, I thought you did very well, and that's why I asked, because it
Right on.
seemed very natural in the way of, like, moving through, like, this girl's saying you're dumb, but she's like, no, I have to go. I'm trying to find a phone, you dummy.
Yep.
So, like, it seemed very, very natural for your writing in particular, as opposed to some of the other films that come out that try and, like, push too hard in the other direction of being like, don't you know what the movies say and all that kind of stuff. So it seemed very, it worked very well.
I did have a film professor that told me, and this does not reflect on any of you at all, but he told me, your audience is stupid. You have to show them everything. Because if you don't, they're going to question everything. So you really got to think that way when you're writing. You got to think about, what can I get away with not showing, and what can I get away with that I have to show, you know? Because people do question it, especially in this day and age, you know?
That leads into our question. The three of us have been called into it. We're just kind of stupid. Trying to figure out
They're learning, but they want to.
the mask
Yes.
And what was the reasoning? I mean, was it to humanize, to, or why?
Because everybody wants to see what's beneath the mask.
And well, I also feel like that leads into the feature film too, like you were saying.
It does, yeah. In the feature version, they won't have their masks on unless they're actually, chasing their prey. So there's a lot of it when they've already captured them where they won't have their masks on. Because I think it's way more scary when it's just a person,
One more question. I lost count of women. Which girl was the one that stuck to the wheel?
So
Erica.
that's one that you don't see her until that point.
I didn't think
No,
I
no, no.
That's the one in the crowd. No.
That's Erica from the beginning with Matt.
No,
No.
in the
She's
wheel,
Rogan's
not
in the
at the wheel.
Oh, in the
Yeah.
wheel. I thought you meant.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you don't see her till the end.
Yeah, the wheel of fire.
And the big twist on that is that, and I'm going to give it away.
Yeah.
In the feature version, she's actually part of the family, and she's still alive. She's bait.
She is really twisted and sick.
That was tasteful, though, the way you had her up there, I gotta say.
Well, originally she was supposed to be completely naked.
really offset it because they really needed a break.
Well, it does, and again, from a female's point of view, I was like, that was nice, the way they tied her up there and didn't show anything.
We were going to. She was originally going to be completely naked, and then we talked to the director of the other film festival and asked him, how do you view nudity? And he said, well, I wouldn't be opposed to showing it, but I would probably have to tell people that, you might want to leave or whatever, and so it might limit your, right. So we went, well, we'll just keep her in a bra and panties then, it's fine. Doesn't matter. And we just dirtied them up to make it look really gross, and, ultimately it's still just as effective because she's tied to a big circle, so.
But ironically, some people still thought she was naked in the film.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true.
We actually got yelled at online about it. People were very shocked that we didn't disclose that to them, that she was naked, and we were like, she wasn't naked, I assure you. She had clothes on.
Well, I'll defend you. It's very tasteful. Very tasteful.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
You guys were kind of touching base on like distribution and stuff, and mentioned like having a certain set kind of for marketing. I do graphic design, and this is something I've always been like really curious about. Is just like when you're working on a film, do you work with personal artists, or there are agencies that specifically specialize in film and stuff? Growing up as a kid, going to blockbusters and stuff, and everybody's doing like horror. Like that was always my favorite thing. How do you work with an artist or whatnot to make sure that your vision is the same as what somebody else is going to post on that?
For sure. So there's both. I mean, there's huge agencies that do it, and they'll charge you, an amount that no indie filmmaker can afford. But we do a lot of stuff with, like, we have a guy that does our poster artwork, and he actually does, like, he paints them. And he's my tattoo artist. And we've worked with a lot of other people doing graphic design stuff that it's mostly through word of mouth referrals, and then we look at their work and we're like, yeah, that's fantastic. We'd love to work with you. Composers is a little different. I know a couple people that compose, and so when we do something that's in one of their strong suits, we'll hit them up about it. But for instance, the guy who scored this, we have a comedy that we did, and he was just like, I don't even want to touch it. I would ruin your film. I'm not good at comedy. And so with composers, you kind of have to put out feelers, and on top of getting references from other people, composers are kind of unique in that probably 3 times a week I'll get emails from composers all over the world that they just scour IMDb and they look for films in production, and then they just contact you about them. It's really kind of cool. So we've met a couple people that way. But yeah, word of mouth referrals is really how, it's the best way to get work if you're starting out, or if you're like more of an independent company kind of deal. And you're not going to be able to charge what you think you will. I mean, what I charge for what I do is nothing compared to what I'd be getting paid if I was in a union out in LA. But I'm also a little guy in Minnesota, so I work for paying my bills basically. And we just keep doing it because we love it. And so, yeah, I mean, there are big companies that you could hook up with and work with and probably make some serious bank, especially down here because you're so close to Atlanta, honestly.
Well,
Oh, Courtney's
got-
got a
oh,
question.
yes. I knew there was one coming. She's just waiting.
She does. She likes to
usually
wait till the end.
She usually has two.
I know, and
better
they're
get
they're
two.
gonna be good though. Are you
They are
ready?
good. Yes.
Well, first of all, I did see you tipping your hat and you gave homage to the old slasher genre. Okay, well done.
Thank you.
Wardrobe.
Mhm.
One girl was in a sweater dress, one girl was in a tank top. I couldn't figure out what we were going for there. Was it summer, fall? I don't know. What was your wardrobe budget and do those kids dress themselves? And I would have killed that bitch for wearing a white belt myself. That white belt, I just wanted to kill her.
So we did have a wardrobe budget because we knew we had to have multiple versions of the same outfit for shooting out of order and whatnot. And the rationale behind different things. So the girl who was constantly taking selfies, the idea was that she was sort of the club type, but it was also fall, and so she was wearing sort of a dress, but at the same time a little bit warmer. Then there's the girl who's more of a tomboy, Sam. So she's wearing the flannel and the jeans, and that was just part of her character background. Then there was the girl who sort of just like the girl next door, and she's wearing like the baseball long sleeve T-shirt and jeans. And then the guy's girlfriend, the idea with her was that she was dressing up for her man. So she was wearing skimpy stuff even though she was freezing because she wanted to show him a little skin. So there was a method behind all of it.
That's why she said she was cold.
Yeah. Can I just ask? I know it might be too much of a question, but can I just get a roundabout? Like, what was the wardrobe budget? Like, what does anything like that even cost? I mean, we're curious, right? Like,
I think our total wardrobe budget was like $250.
Yeah, it was just under 300.
Amazon Prime
And
is
Walmart.
the way to go, and Walmart. Yeah,
Walmart.
we got a lot of T-shirts at Walmart,
Yep.
tank tops, stuff like that, and then all the other stuff was on Amazon because you just can't beat their prices, and it gets there in 2 to 3 days. So
there's a commercial for him, right? Endorsement. Nice. Well, it was awesome to finally. Ooh, do we have more?
She's got to have a
Oh, I'm
second one.
sorry.
She always
Part
has
two. Part two.
She always has two.
Well, no, that covered it. I wondered how much was on budget and if you let them dress
And then the
themselves.
wardrobe. Yeah.
it's a rare thing that I let actors dress themselves, just because a lot of times the wardrobe has to be altered for mics or ends up getting ruined. So we tend to always have a wardrobe budget, just because I don't want them to ruin their own clothes, With the exception being if it's an extra on like a one-day shoot,
They wear their own stuff.
then they wear their own stuff. But if it's a lead actor, we get them their wardrobe.
So I guess I was an extra because I wore my own wardrobe.
Yeah.
I had that from a previous thing, so
A previous film.
that didn't go into the budget. Anybody else with questions? Because otherwise, I have a question for all of you.
Brace yourselves. folks.
Anyone? Okay, so it's more of a statement. This one was for the horror film, but it's a 50-50, so you have 50 days to do it in. So this was actually all done in 35 days. Shooting, editing, special effects, burning it on discs, making posters, and we gave everybody who was in the film a copy of the DVD and the poster, including 7 minutes of the actual car blowing up and burning and sparking and continuing to explode after the fact. But the next one is hope. And when you make a film, you always have the hope of, will people see it? Will we get into the next festival? Will people understand the concept? Will we be able to make money? And it's all based off of hope. So during the film, we actually recorded your reactions to it. And if you want to be credited in our little documentary, or if you have any comments about the film or don't want to,
Yeah, that's why he's giving you a heads up. If you want to opt out, that's totally fine. It's really about our journey, getting the film into different festivals and the hope of winning. Our films to date have won just over 100 awards, including everything from Best Special Effects to Best Picture, everything in between. And it's one of those things. We've worked with a lot of people, a lot of other directors and filmmakers that have not won awards, and you see the frustration in their eyes when they don't get into a film festival, or when they do but then they don't win anything. And so it's always a very big roller coaster ride. And so we just kind of wanted to document that trip and show people, like, look, there's hope. It doesn't matter if you win or not, the hope's still there that you'll win. So we wanted to show that.
For sure, and also you get to know a lot of people and make connections.
Yep. Absolutely.
You want to say something else? Close it out?
well, I'm just saying we have gotten into film festivals where we haven't won, so
Oh, yeah. That
no
happens.
pressure. Because there are some other great films here, and I'm not
There
going
are
to
some
name
phenomenal
specific.
films, yeah.
Some that are really hilarious, some that have really good, certain aspects, really good lighting or really good cinematography, or there's one this actor or actress that just rocked. And like, I'm really stoked that this festival has documentaries, because a lot of film festivals, even if they have documentaries, it's like, and it's my opinion that a lot of people just don't get it. And I think a documentary story can tell just as good of a story as a narrative. And one, it's a lot cheaper to make. And two, they're just interesting stories that should be told that are never told because they don't fit into a narrative. So, yes, we do narratives and we're working on features, but I also wanted to start doing other documentary things. And like, we did one for the 50-50 contest. It didn't win, but I'm still glad I did it because I wanted to do it and it's a documentary. And people liked it. People actually cried during it that I did not think was going to happen. So you still elicit a response. And that's the important thing. You do it for yourself, but you also want to find an audience. So when the audience has a response, even if it's not the one you intended, it still fulfills the purpose of making the art.
Yes, and there's always the bigger picture that it was just another step to meet somebody.
Right.
So the next one might be the big one. And so anyway, if you were talent scouting, we have graphics designer, we have Lance, who, he's costume, and Courtney, you could be a wardrobe consultant for sure, right? And have you ever thought about, like, crafting, body parts and stuff, since you know firsthand? Side job.
Could make a killing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
composer.
Yeah.
Composer over here, Alan. We have two actors in the middle there. The one in the jacket, I know, he's would be glad to get some acting work, and we have other locals, as you've seen.
Yep.
And then, I could be maybe an actress and filmmaker and everything. So are you gonna maybe come back here, do you think?
Maybe, and this is where I'm a little perturbed at Brent. See, I'm wearing this t-shirt, and he's wearing this t-shirt too, but he put some sort of sweater over it, so...
I was chilly.
If in Minnesota, when it's 40 degrees, I call that t-shirt weather. Okay, it's like 60 or something here right now. So, now that I segued that to Brent, why don't you explain?
Yes, we'll be back.
Yay, that's awesome. Well, thanks you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you coming.